Flowers, Alderman Bosley, Alderman Moore, Alderwoman Hubbard, Alderwoman Ingracia, Alderman Conway, Alderman Ortman, Alderman Vollmer, Alderman Villa, Alderman Arnowitz, Alderwoman Murphy, Alderwoman Howard, Alderwoman Green, Alderwoman Behringer, Alderman Rhodey, Alderman Kennedy, Alderwoman Davis, Alderman Schmidt, Alderman French, Alderman Boyd, Alderman Vaccaro, Alderman Ogilvie, Alderman Cone, Alderman Williamson, Alderman Carter, Alderwoman Cruzen, President Reed.
Here.
Alderwoman Tyus, Alderwoman Flowers, Alderman Bosley, Alderman Conway, Alderwoman Murphy, Alderwoman Green, Alderman Rhodey, Alderman Kennedy, Alderman Ogilvie, Alderman Williamson, Alderman Carter, Alderwoman Cruzen, 20 present.
A quorum being present, I'll ask everyone in the chambers and the galleries who's able to stand to please rise for prayer. Giving all honor to God, Almighty God, source of all authority, we humbly ask guidance in our deliberations and wisdom in our conclusions. Amen. We'll spend with our regular order of business, take up our courtesy resolution calendar. I move for adoption of our courtesy resolution calendar. Entertain a second. Second by the Alderman from the 20th. Alderman from the 27th, would you like to approach the dais for resolution 195? Ms. Banks, could you please join us up here with, and Alderman from the 18th. Tell you, I am so honored to have an opportunity to be part of presenting this resolution to you, Ms. Banks. We're going to have some words from the Alderman from the 18th and words from the Alderman from the 27th. I know the Alderwoman from the 1st really wanted to be part of presenting you this resolution also because of what it meant to her. Your family has had a profound impact on politics across not just this city, this region, but the entire state of Missouri, and a positive impact because your family have fought for the rights and the privileges and the needs of families all across this state, which has impacted our nation. So I am indeed honored to share this podium with you today and have the opportunity to known you and your husband for all the years that I've known you. You have shaped my life in politics, and just by the nature of doing that and touching my kids and being such a positive role model for them and my daughters, I think all of them have turned out much better. So we'll hear from Alderman from the 18th. 27.
I'm going to go before Terry. No, it definitely is an honor and a pleasure to be up here to present this resolution to Mrs. Banks. I think they want you to stand over here. Ms. Banks lives in the 27th Ward, and she is a great constituent, actually one of my favorites. She's the type of constituent that will come to every single meeting and get involved in everything. So she is the ideal woman and resident, you know, that we all, I guess, asked for. I remember as a kid with my grandmother, your husband, you, folding the mail for my grandmother and your husband, Senator Banks. And again, this is just a pleasure to stand up here with you at this moment. Happy birthday. I know that I'm late, but happy birthday.
Mr. President, members of the board, I will take this opportunity just to read a small portion of this resolution. Whereas Anita Louise Jenkins was born on December 3rd in Bay St. Louis, Mississippi, to the union of Thomas and Marie Jenkins. Whereas she came to St. Louis in 1945 to attend the St. Mary's Infirmary School of Nursing for colored people, and the first Catholic school for nursing for African American women in the United States. After becoming a registered nurse, she earned a Bachelor's of Science degree at St. Francis College in Joliet, Illinois. Whereas she did a, quote, lot of nursing, working at home, that's a lot of nursing at Homer Phillips Hospital, believe me, an operating room at DePaul, and served as the Director of Nurses at Yateman Community Health Center for 16 years before transitioning to business management alongside her husband. And whereas Ms. Banks is a member of the Martin Luther King Jr. State Celebration Commission, which oversees the state's observance of the day in January honoring the late Dr. Martin Luther King. And whereas Mrs. Banks is president of the St. Mary's Infirmary Alumni Association and serves as the Annie Malone Children and Family Service Center, both the parade and the soiree. Whereas Ms. Banks is a member of, and we have the Alderwoman from the first, is a member of the Ladies Auxiliary of the Knights of Peter Cleaver, both the 3rd degree and 4th degree courts, and a recipient of the parish of St. Alphonsus. Now therefore be resolved by this Board of Aldermen of the City of St. Louis that we pause in our deliberations to recognize the accomplishments of Ms. Anita Louise Jenkins Banks as an extraordinary community servant and believer of helping others to receive satisfactions of life's joys, fulfillments, and direct the clerk of this board to spread a commemorative copy of this resolution to the end that it may be presented to our honoree at a time deemed appropriate by its sponsor. Certainly, there are individuals and families that make such a great contribution to this city that we must pause in all deliberations to give them the due respect necessary for the work and the contributions that they have made. I know that both your husband and you have known members of my family. You know, I had an aunt that was a nurse at Homer Phillips Hospital also, so familiar Kennedy. And know that your contributions through the years to the city of St. Louis has helped transform this city and made it a far better place to live. We are very pleased to both give you this resolution and to have you as our city. Now, the main sponsor of the resolution is here, and will have lots more to say than I.
No, we'll have a little. You already said.
All right, well, if I may, Mr. President.
Thank you. Good morning, members of the board, President and Mrs. Banks. I'm quite honored to be standing here this morning because I met Ms. Banks, I guess, about 23, 24 years ago as part of a dynamic duo. If any of you all remember back when President Clinton burst on the scene, he talked about the fact that when you get one, you get two, you get both he and Hillary. And we didn't know really how much of a prophecy he was, but I understood that because I'm part of a duo, and when you're part of a team for a long time, you work together. And so I met Mrs. Banks as part of a team of Senator and Mrs. Banks. I learned about her through the political structure of the last 23, 24 years politically, but I also knew one of her personal friends who was my neighbor, Dr. and Mrs. Gaffney, who lived behind me, and she and Mrs. Banks were nurses at Homer G. Phillips, so I knew, I'm sorry, at St. Mary's, I'm sorry. I met her also, and I got to learn about her through Mrs. Gaffney and the stories that she told me. As a young female politician, oftentimes there were male mentors that you could go to. You could talk to them, and I was lucky because I got to talk to governors, congressmen, state senators, such as Senator Banks, Senator Bass is who actually brought me into politics, but Senator Banks, Senator Bass, Senator Carter, state representatives. But when as I was progressing along, sometimes you need to talk to females. And of course, it used to be State Rep Carter and then Senator Carter, and there were a few females, but a lot of the times, the females that you needed to talk to were not elected, such as Pearlie Evans with the congressman, but another one was Mrs. Banks. She was a force in her own, and still is a force in her own right, okay? So if you needed to talk to her, there was no body better to get to Senator Banks than Mrs. Banks. I was fortunate. He and I got along really well, but Mrs. Banks was able to give me a perspective that oftentimes I don't think men have. I think that's the reason that women push so hard for women to be in politics, because we bring a different perspective. So I was able to get not only personal information and advice from her, but also political advice. And although we talk about a dynamic duo, Mrs. Banks is a dynamic, caring, sensitive, wonderful godmother, friend, politician in her own right. And a few years ago, we lost the senator, and just to show you what kind of person she is, she's continued with all the things that they were doing, just as he would have wanted her to do. She didn't draw up and say, oh my God, I'm part of a duo that does so much. She went right along. She helped the Black History Museum. She's raised funds. She's had I was lucky to be at her birthday party a couple of weeks ago. I won't tell you about the things that she did. I didn't know seniors did those kind of things. But no, seriously. But she is just a person who is so important to our community. Sometimes you don't know the things that people do. When I first got in politics, and the Post-Dispatch had an article about all the things Senator Bass had done, like worked on Harris Stowe College, also worked on the Dr. Martin Luther King celebration that we do, and just so many things. But all of them also took the work of Mrs. Anita Banks, okay? And I keep saying Senator Bass, I'm so sorry. Banks, Senator Banks. Senator Bass got me into politics, and this is Senator Banks. But the whole thing that I'm trying to say is that they worked together. And when you have a couple like that work together, and then you see the person continue to do the great things when the other person has passed on, then you know that team was an equally balanced team, and that they both played such important parts in getting these things accomplished. And I want to say, on my own personal note, how very honored I feel that you were able to give me the time and to help mentor me as a young politician, and to help direct me in a correct manner, and to always make sure that I understood that my goal was to represent my community. You lived that, and you showed me that, and I appreciate it. And I think it is, I am so honored to be able today to stand before this board and speak just a few words about what a great person you were, and how honored I am to be able to stand here today and to help present this resolution to you. Are we going to present? Okay. And at this time, I'd like to present the resolution. Did you already? He already read it. I'd like to present the resolution to Mrs. Anita Jenkins Banks from the Board of Aldermen, and in much honor and respect and appreciation.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 5th.
Ms. Banks, I would just like to stand and tell you that I really appreciate the time and effort that your family has given to St. Louis. My grandfather, the late Reverend Jonas Hubbard Jr., often spoke of your husband and his great works, and I'm just honored to have you here today and to see you be recognized in this manner for all of the great things you've done for the city of St. Louis. Thank you.
Alderwoman from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd like to make a motion to have this resolution be in bank.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 6th, seconded by the Alderman from the 20th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Madam Clerk, please prepare another copy of the resolution in bank.
So noted.
Alderwoman from the 19th.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the board. And you know what? I'm going to say the Honorable Anita Banks. That is more appropriate. I know that there are too many of us who should say thank you. I know what you did for me as I came in as a supportive entity in my ward, in the 19th ward. The campaign office that you and your husband had in that ward for the last, 40 years? At least. Is absolutely one of the historic places that many people got their first conversation about going into politics, got their, what I call, chastising that needed to be done when they were dealing in politics. But you have made a difference. And I know that because I was up close and personal in one of those situations where you took someone, you mentored him, you made sure that every step he made was the right step by protocol and everything else. And so I thank you for that. I thank you for all the help that you have given me. I know when you're whispering, so that's okay. And I love it. I love it because there's so many people, and I know this, they will come to you and ask you, is this okay? What do you think about this? And you have sound judgment because you've been there, you've been a part of it, you've seen it for years. And I have to say some great things about your husband and all that he did for this state, because he was strong. I mean, he understood the state protocol. He stood tall for the city of St. Louis. As they say, he brought the bacon home to the city of St. Louis. And he did many great things for us. I know when I was president of the school board, he brought me in his office and he set me down to explain to me how to deal with the politicians in Jefferson City. That's a unique situation. So I appreciate that, because we wouldn't have gotten a lot of things that we got in the DSEG settlement. We wouldn't have got a lot of things that we got because he was a strong voice who knew how to talk to people, who knew how to cut a deal, who knew how and knew the laws there. See, that's critical. We can run around and be important, but if we don't know how to execute, forget it. But he knew. And so the only way he could be that strong is to have a strong partner. And you made his life good. You made our lives better. And so on behalf of all that I have any opportunity to work on and have worked on, most especially in the 19th Ward, I just want to say thank you, Honorable Anita Banks.
Alderman from the 8th.
Mr. President, members of the board, I did have the honor of working with Senator Banks, and I met him at a very, very young age. At least as to me, he was a man of few words, but they were strong words. And back in the old days, you didn't need a contract or a, tit-for-tat type of thing. When the senator told you something, you could take it to the bank. But the other thing that I've known in politics, behind every strong leader is a strong spouse. Because without two people working together, supporting the same goals and the same ideals, you will not get the results. You will not have the strength to lead your community the way the senator did. I know that you were very much a part of that, and the strength that he had, just as the Alderwoman from the 19th had mentioned, he was a strong leader. He always looked out for the city of St. Louis. He reached across the aisle. He did what he needed to do to protect the residents of the city, the 19th Ward. And as a child, I can remember fondly being warmly welcomed at the Jordan Chamber headquarters on Grand. And there he sat in his office many, many times. I would go in there, and you know me, I'm not much of a talker, but we would have a conversation. I would talk for 28 minutes, and he would talk for 45 seconds. But an incredible individual. Thank you for your support of both your husband and of the city of St. Louis.
Alderman from the 4th.
Happy birthday, Ms. Banks. Your husband, Senator J.B. Jet Banks, is one of my, I would say, the guys that influenced me into getting into politics. I met him when we were trying to save Homer Phillips Hospital, and just being around him was a great aura. I got a great feeling from your husband. I have a picture of me, Senator Banks, and Alderman from the 3rd Ward, Freeman Bosley Jr. together. And as soon as I get the picture blown up, I'm going to present it to you. But happy birthday to you. And you've been an inspiration to me and this city. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Yeah. You want to say a few words, Mrs. Banks?
Well, good morning. Good morning to all of you. I'm a little bit on the full side, you know. But I want to thank God for all of you for me, because celebration is a good thing. And I'm very happy and I feel blessed to have 90 years. And I know I'll have more than that. And I want to thank President Reed. I want to thank all members of the board for this honor bestowed on me today. And I'm very grateful to all of you for all the wonderful things you said. This is a day that I will never forget. And I just say again, I feel blessed that God has given it to me and given to you that you want to give back to me. And I thank you for thinking of my late husband, Senator Jet Banks. He loved what he did, and he did do a lot for all the people. And for me, I didn't know you all knew so much about me. I don't know where all the information came from. But it's good that I'm here today. It's good that President Reed thought enough and all of you thought enough about me to do this resolution, and I will treasure it. I will never forget this day, and I just can't say thank you enough for it. And for me, the things that I have done, I guess God inspired me to do it, and I'm still able to do it. I still want to do it, and I will continue to do it as long as I can. President Reed, you gave me a lot of appreciation and thanks today, and I want to say thanks to you because you have been with me in some things that I do, such as the annual essay contest, and I want to thank you publicly today for all the help you have given me for that. I do appreciate it. The children enjoy you. You have not missed coming. Also, Aldermen, some other aldermen here have come, and I want to thank all of them for participating in the things that I do, because I do enjoy what I do. I guess you mentioned my mother and father, they were very involved in the church, and the church doors, I always said from a child, they didn't even open unless we were there. And I'm talking about I had 2 sisters. They're in God's hands now. But we were always part of the church. So doing things for the church came natural for me, because that's how I was brought up. My father did volunteer work and helped people all the time. And maybe that's where the inspiration for me to help going into nursing may have come from, because, again, as I say, I'm from a family that did do that. They mentioned me being Claver. My parents were Clavers. I was brought up with Claverism. So I guess it's a good thing that you got all the information wherever it came from. But I think it's a good thing, and I'm happy about it. And my alderman here, Chris Carter, brought up about Paul Carter, his grandmother. when she decided she was going to go in politics. We had the limousine service at that time, and her announcement came in the room at the limousine office, and I was the one who introduced her that she was running. And of course my husband said, well, all the years I've been running, you never got up and spoke for me. So I said, well, see, women stick together. So, but I want to thank all of you today for this beautiful day. And Alderman Reed and Sharon, all of you are my friends. Kennedy, I've known some of them for quite some time. President Kennedy, not President, but Alderman Kennedy, you continue to do all the good things you do. And I look at the board sometimes, and so I watch, and yeah, I think everything is good. Politics is a good thing, and the 36 years my husband gave to it was wonderful years. I think half of my life was even spent in Jefferson City, because he would tell me, well, I need you to come up here for this, for that, so I was always there, and I enjoyed it. He enjoyed it, and I enjoyed it too. So I want to thank all the members of the board, and I want to thank you, President Reed, and Alderman Kennedy, Alderman Chris, and my good friend Sharon. Sharon is a wonderful, I'm glad to see she's back here, because this is what she loves. I know she loves it. So thank you. Thanks again to all of you, and I will never forget this day. Thanks for the resolution. It's just beautiful. And anytime I can be available for anything, just give me a call. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Mrs. Banks, and in closing, we just need to say that this resolution that you're being presented with today is the highest honor this board has to give. And what it does, it cements in time some of your many contributions up until this point. So that 100, 200 years from now, when you research the records of the city of St. Louis, they will know that we paused on this day to recognize you on your 90th birthday. And we've put into our permanent records some of your many contributions, so that when people read about this point in history of the city of St. Louis, they will read about Miss Anita Banks and know that she passed this way and contributed so much so that we wanted to make sure it was documented. Let's all stand and give her a round of applause for 90 years and all the years of hard work.
Thanks. I forgot to say thanks to all my friends who came today. Just want to say thanks also to all my friends who came today to enjoy this day with me. Thanks for coming.
You're going to do a photo right over here.
Oh, okay.
Been moved and seconded that we adopt our courtesy resolution calendar. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. With that, we'll return to our regular order of business. Introduction round of guests. Any introduction round of guests? Introduction round of guests. Alderman from 20th.
President, members of the board, I see that Lisa's at the board. It's my honor this morning to introduce the following individuals as our special guests. Keith Taylor, Todd Hake, and Jeff Hans, who are from the Carpenters District Council of Greater St. Louis, as well as Tim Boyer, who's with the White Collar Crime Unit in our Circuit Attorney's Office. He's also here today. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderwoman from 14th.
Good morning, President Reed. I would like to have as my honored guest Gary Otten from Painters District Council 2, Demetrius Alfred from Firefighters Local 73.
Alderman from the 25th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to welcome this morning Detective Ryan Lynch from the St. Louis Police Officers Association and also Ronnie Auer. And a special shout out to Joe Thiele, who's sitting up in the balcony.
Yeah.
Alderman from the 16th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I would like to have as my special guest today Mr. Anthony Lancia with AGC.
Alderman from the 27th.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd like to have as my special guest Committee Woman of the 2nd Ward, Maddie Moore, and Committee Woman of the 6th Ward, Miss Ollie Stewart. Thanks.
Alderman from the 1st.
Mr. President, members of the board, I'd like to have as my special guest the committee woman from the 6th Ward, Mrs. Ollie Stewart, also Mrs. Anita Banks, and also our license collector, Mrs. Mavis Thompson. Mavis Thompson, Esquire, I guess I should say.
Yeah. Alderman from the 22nd.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the board, I'd like to have as my special guests Mr. Leroy Grant and Chris Pickle with AT&T.
Any further introductions? Any further introductions? I think there's a Mr. Chad Grayman here from Grayman Realty. Where is he at? All right, please stand. Welcome to the board. Any further introductions? Any further introductions? Alderman from the 10th, like to wrap us up.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the board, as we gather here on January 9th, for you people who believe in astrology, today is the birthday of Richard Milhouse Nixon and Joan Baez, which disproves all astrological signs and people being alike. But more importantly, if you read the Holiday Insights calendar, this is Play God Day, which is dangerous for me to mention that to anyone in this room, especially the alderman from the 23rd who is not here. Thank the Lord. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman. Alderman from the 18th, you recognize on approval of the minutes.
I finally made it to be floor majority leader. Mr. President, members of the board, I move for the approval of the minutes of the December 12, 2014 minutes.
Moved by the Alderman from the 18th, seconded by the Alderman from the 9th. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Report of city officials.
Report of city officials can be found in sections A, B, and C of the agenda and have been placed in all aldermen's mailboxes.
We've dispensed with line item 7. Would anyone like to take any bills off of any of our informal calendars? Would anyone like to take any bills off of any of our informal calendars? We'll dispense with line items 8 through 10. First reading of board bills.
Board Bill 229, sponsored by Alderman Vaccaro, an ordinance to amend Section 7 of Ordinance 69190, adjusting the salaries of employees in the Sheriff's Office and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 230, sponsored by Alderman Conway, an ordinance approving and authorizing the city to execute a consent to assignment and agreement to the extension of project completion date of a development agreement between the city and Hallmark Hotels containing a severability clause. Board Bill 231, sponsored by Alderwoman Davis, an ordinance recommended and approved by the Airport Commission, the Board of Public Service, and the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing and establishing a multi-year public works and improvement program at Lambert Airport and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 232, sponsored by Alderwoman Davis, an ordinance recommended by the Airport Commission, the Board of Public Service, and the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing and directing the Director of Airports and the Comptroller to enter into and execute an agreement and a contract of sale between St. Louis and North Park Partners for the sum of $150,000 containing a severability clause and an emergency clause. Board Bill 233, sponsored by Alderwoman Davis, an ordinance recommended and approved by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing and directing the Director of Airports and the Comptroller to enter into and execute 2 automated teller machine concession agreements at Lambert Airport between the city and the following concessionaires: Bank of America and Cardtronics, granting to each concessionaire the right license privilege to operate a non-exclusive ATM concession at the airport and containing a severability clause and in an emergency clause. Board Bill 234, sponsored by Alderman Ortman, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 1956 Wyoming containing a severability clause. Board Bill 235, sponsored by Alderwoman Ingracia and President Reed, an ordinance repealing the requirement of approval of the City Plan Commission of all applications for proposed residential structures or uses that are to be governmentally subsidized, repealing Section 1 of Ordinance 56167 of the Revised Code and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 236, sponsored by Alderman Vollmer, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 5528 Botanical and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 237, sponsored by Alderman Vollmer, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 5435 Elizabeth and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 238, sponsored by Alderman Williamson, an ordinance to regulate employer and employee working relationships between the city and all employees under the classified service, including compensation plans, terms and conditions of employment, benefits, leaves of absence, and authorization for a deferred compensation plan, repealing Ordinance 69189 and 69617, allocating certain other employees to a grade with rate and including an emergency clause. Board Bill 239, sponsored by Alderman Conway, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 2350 South Grand Boulevard and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 240, sponsored by Alderman Conway, an ordinance approving a redevelopment plan for 4135 through 37 Shaw. That's the extent of our first reading.
Reference to committee.
To the Public Safety Committee, Board Bill 235. To the Ways and Means Committee, Board Bill 230. To the Housing Committee, Board Bill 240. To the Public Employees Committee, Board Bills 229 and 238. To the Transportation and Commerce Committee, Board Bill 231, 232, and 233. And to the Neighborhood Development Committee, Board Bills 234, 236, 237, and 239. That's the extent of reference to committee.
Second reading.
Following board bills were reported out of the Ways and Means Committee. Board Bill 217, sponsored by Alderwoman Young and Alderwoman Ingracia, an ordinance establishing the Lafayette Square Special Business District and containing a severability, effectiveness, and emergency clauses. Board Bill 218, sponsored by Alderwoman Young and Alderwoman Ingracia, an ordinance submitting to the qualified voters residing in the Lafayette Square Special Business District a proposal to levy a tax on the real property located in said district, submitting said proposal to the voters of said district in an election on April the 7th, 2015, and containing an emergency clause. The following board bill was reported out of the Transportation and Commerce Committee, Board Bill 188, sponsored by Alderwoman Flowers, and ordinance recommended by the Port Authority Commission authorizing and directing the mayor and the comptroller to enter into a lease agreement between the city and Continental Cement Company, LLC, for property, mooring privileges and easement on certain land on the unapproved wharf for a period of 10 years, commencing on the date of execution with 3 5-year mutual options. That's the extent of our second reading.
Dispense with line item 14. Please move Board Bill number 209 to the regular perfection calendar.
So noted.
Perfection consent.
Board Bill 201, sponsored by Alderwoman Cruzen and Alderman Williamson, an ordinance establishing the DeBolivar Place Special Business District, setting its boundaries, initial rate of levy, subject to the approval of qualified voters, bonding authority, and uses to which tax revenue may be put, creating a board of commissioners and containing severability, effectiveness, and emergency clauses. Board Bill 202, sponsored by Alderwoman Cruzen and Alderman Williamson, an ordinance submitting to the qualified voters residing in the DeBolivar Place Special Business District, submitting said proposal to the voters of said district at an election on April the 7th, 2015, and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 203, sponsored by Alderman Carter, an ordinance recommended by the Parking Commission and authorizing and directing the treasurer to issue subordinated parking revenue bonds, Series 2014, in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $6,750,000 and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 215, sponsored by Alderman Kennedy, and ordinance recommended by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing and directing the St. Louis Municipal Finance Corporation to issue and sell as Forest Park leasehold revenue refunding bonds, Series 2015, in the aggregate principal amount not to exceed $11 million, and in order to refund all or a portion of its outstanding leasehold revenue refunding bonds and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 216, sponsored by Alderman Kennedy, and ordinance recommended by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment pertaining to and providing for the issuance of obligations payable under the annually renewable lease agreement, authorizing and directing the execution and delivery of one or more series of lease certificates of participation obligations, evidencing interest in the right to receive rentals to be made by in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $5,500,000 in order to refinance and refund all or a portion of St. Louis Municipal Finance Corporation lease certificates of participation, Series 2008, outstanding in a principal amount of $5,455,000, containing a severability clause that's the extent of perfection consent.
Alderman from the 18th, you recognized on the motion for the perfection consent calendar. Recognized on the motion for the perfection consent calendar.
Yes, Mr. President, members of the board, I move for the adoption of the perfection consent calendar.
Moved by the Alderman from the 18th. I entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 20th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Board bills for perfection.
Board Bill 204, sponsored by Alderman Conway, and ordinance recommended and approved by the Airport Commission, the Comptroller, the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, making certain findings with respect to the transfer of up to $13,727,769 of excess monies that the city intends to transfer from the Debt Service Stabilization Fund to the Airport Revenue Fund, containing a severability and emergency clause.
Alderman from the 8th, you recognize on the perfection of Board Bill number 204.
And members of the board, I would move for perfection of Board Bill number 204.
Moved by the Alderman from the 8th, seconded by the Alderman from the 9th. Alderman, please proceed.
I renew my motion.
There's been a request for roll call. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus, Alderwoman Flowers, Alderman Bosley, Alderman Moore, Alderwoman Hubbard, Alderwoman Ingracia, Alderman Conway, Alderman Ortman, Alderman Vollmer, Alderman Villa, Alderman Arnowitz, Alderwoman Murphy, Alderwoman Howard, Alderwoman Green, Alderwoman Behringer, Alderman Rhodey, Alderman Kennedy, Alderwoman Davis, Alderman Schmid, Alderman French, Alderman Boyd, Alderman Vaccaro, Alderman Ogilvy, Alderman Cone, Alderman Williamson, Alderman Carter, Alderwoman Cruzen, President Reed,
Aye.
Alderwoman Flowers, Alderman Bosley, Alderman Moore, Alderwoman Green, Alderwoman Cruzen, 23 aye votes, 1 no vote.
By your vote, you sustain the motion on Alderman from the 8th and perfected Board Bill number 204.
Board Bill 205, sponsored by Alderman Conway, an ordinance recommended and approved by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing and directing the Director of Airports and the Comptroller to enter into and execute the Lambert International Airport Wi-Fi distributed antenna system operating agreement between the City and Concourse Communications Group for the installation, operation, marketing, maintenance, and management of a wireless Internet access and distributed antenna system at the airport containing a severability clause and an emergency clause.
Alderman from the 8th, you recognize on the Professional Board Bill number 205.
Mr. President and members of the board, I move for perfection of Board Bill number 206.
205.
205.
I'm sorry, 205. And request the previous roll.
Moved by Alderman from the 8th, seconded by Alderman from the 9th. Any discussion? There has been a request for previous roll. Hearing no objection, motion carries.
Board Bill 206, sponsored by Alderman Conway, an ordinance recommended and approved by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing and directing the Director of Airports and the Comptroller to enter into and execute the Lambert International Airport Lease Agreement, AL-161, between the City, the owner and operator of the airport, and Union Electric Company, doing business as Ameren, Missouri, granting to the lessee certain rights and privileges in connection with the occupancy and use of leased premises for a period of 10 years, containing a severability clause and an emergency clause.
Alderman from the 8th, you recognize on the Perfection of Board Bill number 206.
I appreciate that prompt. I move for perfection of Board Bill number 206.
And moved by Alderman from the 8th, seconded by Alderman from the 25th. Any discussion?
Previous roll.
It's been a request for previous roll. Hearing no objection, motion carries.
Board Bill 209, sponsored by Alderwoman Young, an ordinance approving addendum number 6 to the development plan of Laclede Landing Redevelopment Corporation and containing a severability clause and an emergency clause.
Alderman from the 17th, you recognize on the Perfection of Board Bill number 209.
Yes, in the absence of the Alderwoman from the 6th, I move that we, 7th, excuse me, I move that we perfect Board Bill number 209.
It's been moved by Alderman from the 17th, seconded by Alderman from the 9th. Any further discussion? It's been moved and seconded that we perfect Board Bill number 209. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
That's the extent of board bills for perfection.
We'll dispense with line item 17 and 18 and 19. Alderwoman from the 1st.
Mr. President, members of the board, I am going to move to reconsider
Courtesy
Resolution 190, which is a birthday recognition of a Mr. Roy Gay. I'm not the primary sponsor, but I read this resolution. This gentleman turned 107 years old.
We need to get a motion in a second first.
Okay.
And as for the reconsideration of the courtesy resolution calendar.
Right.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 1st, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 6th. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus.
Aye.
Alderwoman Flowers. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Conway. Alderman Ortman. Alderman Vollmer. Alderman Villa. Alderman Arnowitz. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Green. Alderwoman Behringer. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderman Schmidt. Alderman French. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaccaro. Alderman Ogilvie. Alderman Cone. Alderman Cone. Alderman Williamson. Alderman Carter. Alderwoman Cruzen. President Reed.
Aye.
Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Green. Alderwoman Cruzen. 24, I vote.
By vote, you sustain the motion, Alderman from the first, and reconsider courtesy resolution calendar. Alderman from the first, Alderman from the first, will you like to make a motion to make that courtesy resolution 197?
190.
190, is that the one? Courtesy resolution 190 in bank?
Mr. President, members of the board, I move to pass courtesy resolution 190 in bank. And I'd also ask if we could speak to this resolution and we also could have the resolution read. No, it's too late?
We can't have it read, but you have an opportunity to read it if you'd like to read it. It's been moved that we pass courtesy resolution 190 in bank. I entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 12th. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Madam Clerk, please prepare another copy of resolution 190 in bank. Alderman from the first, please proceed.
Mr. President, members of the board, I was not fortunate enough to know, I don't know Mr. Roy Gay, but when I started to read this resolution and I saw that he was born December 21st, 1907, that piqued my curiosity. That means that he just turned 107 years old, and if he lives to December again, he will be 108 years old. I thought that deserved from this Board of Aldermen. I appreciate you doing this, Mr. President, but I thought that it deserved all of us to wish him a happy birthday and Godspeed, and to at least have some time to speak to what a great honor that is that God lets you live to be 107 years old. I was fortunate enough to live next to my next door neighbor. He lived to be 102, and he was such a resource for me. And even now, I still miss Mr. Williams because he was like my second husband almost. And right now, in his house is his niece who came to take care of him when he was 100, and she's 95, and so I know how important that is when we have people who live this age, how much knowledge they have, what they've gone through. And so sometimes we do these resolutions, but people that live to be 107 years old, we, the Board of Aldermen, need to honor them and to let their family know how important that is, not only to the family but to us. And that is why I asked for it to be reconsidered and to talk about Mr. Gay a little bit. And since we can't read the resolution, I just want to say he lived on a farm in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. He had children, and he had 3 wives when you get to be 107, okay? So he had 3 wives. He had a daughter, Jeanette, and his brother, Clifton Gay. He lives at the Parkview Apartments, lived for many years with his sister, Annelle Gray. He still has surviving siblings, so that's wonderful. And one of his siblings, Houston Gay, is 103. I think then is a retired military veteran. So I think all of this is very, very important. And I think that it was just, we needed to take a little time to slow down and to wish Mr. Roy Gay a happy birthday, 107th birthday, and looking forward to his 108th birthday.
Well, let's give him a round of applause. 107, 108 years, that is significant. Thank you, Alderwoman. We turn to our regular order. Alderman from 17th?
Yes, Mr. President, I'd be remiss if I didn't at least remark that the Gays actually live in my ward, 4451 Forest Park, and his younger sister at the spry age of 92 still works the polling place every election at 4399 Forest Park. Wow. So I guess longevity must be in their genes. But, in any event, I would have been remiss if I had acknowledged Annelle, because she has been a long-time worker of the 17th Ward.
Thank you. Thank you all. When your baby sister is 92, yeah, you've been around for a while. We will dispense with line items 21 and 22, miscellaneous unfinished business.
We have none.
Announcements.
Monday, January the 12th, Ways and Means Committee meeting at 9 a.m. in the Kennedy Room. Wednesday, January the 14th, housing meeting at 8:30 in the Kennedy Room. Friday, January the 16th, full board meeting, 10 a.m. in the chambers. That's the extent of my announcement.
Before we go any further, I also want to just offer a moment of silence, if all of you would join me, for Howard Myers. Howard Myers was a trailblazer in our community. He worked for rights for people of all races, all genders, and everything, years before it was hip and cool to do it. And he passed away this past week, so I'm going to ask everybody if you'll stand and join me with a moment of silence for Howard Myers. Alderman from the 10th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the board, I'd like at this time to wish my younger colleague from the 22nd Ward a happy birthday this Tuesday on the fine January 13th, a wonderful day in the world when Jeffrey Boyd was brought into it to make it a different place, if not a better place. Thank you.
Alderman from the 26th.
Yes, Mr. President, members of the board, I'd like to have scheduled on the agenda a public employees meeting at 10 o'clock. Okay, on Monday.
Okay, thank you.
Public employees meeting at 10 o'clock. And I also want to wish my mother her 90th birthday, and that'll be January 10th.
Oh, man.
And I really appreciate
Congratulations.
it. Okay, thank you.
Tell her happy birthday. Alderman from the 22nd.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the board, I'd like to wish a few people a happy birthday. Of course, my colleague from the 10th Ward, our birthday is the same day, January the 13th. Happy birthday. And also, belated birthday to two of our colleagues, Larry Arnowitz and Frank Williamson, whose birthday was January the 2nd.
Oh, man. Alderman from the 25th.
Mr. President, I'd like to take the opportunity to recognize the Gribbage family, which they own a restaurant in the 25th Ward, but they have been wonderful supporters of not only the neighborhood, the Dutchtown neighborhood, but also the Bosnian community here in St. Louis. They were one of the first families that relocated here. They had some really exciting opportunities presented to them, and this Sunday, I believe on the Food Network, they're going to be participating in Guy Fieri's Family Food Grab competition and cooking competition on the Food Network this Sunday at 6:30. They're very excited about it and encourage everyone to watch them and celebrate a local family that does a lot of really good things, having their 15 minutes of fame. Thank you.
Any further announcements? Any further announcements? We also have tonight at 6 o'clock in the Rotunda is the investiture ceremony for our own Mavis Thompson, license collector of the city of St. Louis. So everyone is invited to join her and me and others from all across the city and the region for her ceremony tonight. Again, 6 o'clock p.m. tonight in the Rotunda. Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Alderman from the 18th, you recognize on the motion to excuse.
Yes, Mr. President, members of the board, I move to excuse the Alderman from the 3rd, 15th, and 28th due to necessary absence.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 18th, seconded by the Alderman from the 25th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Alderman from the 18th, you recognize on the motion to adjourn.
Yes, Mr. President, members of the board, I move to adjourn until Friday, January 16th. 10 a.m.
Been moved by the Alderman from the 18th, seconded by the Alderman from the 25th. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Stand adjourned.